I started playing Valorant on April 7, 2020, and in less than 3 weeks of ranked grind, I've reached the highest rank in the game called Valorant, but now we know it as a Radiant. Fast forward 5 years, I've reached the same rank 23 times on both EU and NA servers, while completing different challenges on multiple accounts. Now you're probably thinking, this guy is simply talented, or this guy has no life and he's just grinding the game 24/7. But you would be wrong. Every time I've got into top 0.03% of players, it would be in less than 100 hours, no matter if it was my main or some new fresh account. And when it comes to the mechanical talent, well, I was always far from an aim star, even in my prime days. Then what is the difference between you and me? Before Valorant, I was grinding ranks same as you. I've spent thousands of hours in CSGO, League of Legends, Overwatch and in some other games. Yes, in each of these games I've reached the highest rank, but I was simply brute forcing my way in ranked, without any real improvement plan. That is the same mistake that you are making right now. To avoid spending thousands of hours grinding Valorant, I reworked my entire approach to learning games and I started developing a step-by-step plan based on my previous experience. This way of thinking helped me reach Radiant multiple times, and it also works in other games, since I've reached in less than a month the top 0.1% of players in Marvel Rivals as well. So in this video, I'm going to share with you a definitive guide for your improvement at Valorant and share with you my personal experience. But before we start, my name is CHARLATAN and I've successfully improved thousands of Valorant players with my private coaching programs that you can get on my Discord server. And now is the time for you to finally understand how to improve as well. First thing that you need to understand are the skill sets that you need to work on in order to become a better player. We categorize these skill sets as 7 pillars of improvement, which are mechanical skill, game knowledge, game sense, team play, communication, mentality, training, and preparation. Most of the players that are hard stuck are simply missing one or more of these pillars in order to move forward, and every single one of them is extremely important if you want to reach Radiant in an efficient way as an average player. Before we continue, this video is sponsored by Valorant Tracker TRN, which you can download for free by using my link from the description. This application allows you to analyze yourself and to always understand on which fields you can improve as a solo queue player, and in my private coaching sessions, this is the first thing that I do for my students. But this software is extremely useful to analyze your teammates and enemies as well. During your live games, based on these statistics, already at the start you can see which players are the weakness of yours or enemy team, which can increase your chances of winning if you use this data in the smart way. They also have integrated guides and lineups that can be extremely useful if you're learning new agents or if you simply want to increase your game knowledge while you're actually playing the game. Even though this video is sponsored by Valorant Tracker, I truly believe that this software can give you an advantage in your ranked games and it can help you to improve faster. So let's start with the first and most fundamental one, which is mechanical skill. After all, Valorant is an FPS game, and no matter how good are your other skill sets, at the end of the day you need to shoot and you need to kill your enemies. But remember that all the way up to Immortal 3, you should be winning 80% of your rounds and games by mainly relying on other skills, while only around 20% should be won because of your raw mechanics. It is simply much easier reaching high elo lobbies by relying on other skills, and the main beauty of Valorant is that there are multiple different playstyles and tools that can help you out. This means that in order to reach high elo, you don't need to have mechanics of a pro player, while there are multiple examples of this, and I'm one of them. My mechanics were never on a level of a Radiant player, yet I still got Radiant 23 times since closed beta. But also remember that after Immortal 3, mechanical skill starts to impact your win conditions a lot more. So in order to reach Radiant, you will need to have mechanics of at least an average Immortal player. Now, this pillar we divide in 3 subcategories that you need to work on, and those are your aim, gunplay, and movement. When it comes to your aim, it should predominantly rely on a proper crosshair placement, and this is the first skill that you should work on as a beginner in any FPS game. If you have a good crosshair placement, clearing angles, holding positions, pre-firing enemies and taking kills becomes much easier. Remember that your crosshair should always be perfectly placed at the most probable angle from which enemies can kill you, no matter what you or your teammates are doing at that moment of time. But also, depending on enemy's health, yours health and weapon which you're using, depends how high or how low you should place your crosshair. If enemies are low HP, you can get away with 1 or 2 body shots instead of relying on headshots. If you're playing operator or shotguns, your crosshair should always be placed at the enemy's belly, but most of the time you should practice aiming at the enemy's neck or head level, and you should never be sweeping the floor unless that is your job. So what are the tools and trainings with which you can improve your crosshair placement? For most of the players, the best one is usually the regular deathmatch, because during DMs you will have the highest levels of practice and repetition. Another good option is reviewing your own demos from Ranked and Deathmatch, while figuring out on which positions you can improve your crosshair placement and then practicing that in the custom server. Also, in the custom server, you can practice proper crosshair placement with your friends or alone with the help from Valorant-specific tools. With your friend, you can simply play some kind of a hide-and-seek game, or you can practice some specific in-game scenarios such as post plants, retakes, taking space, etc. But if you don't have friends that are willing to practice with you, we can use some other tools. For an example, a lot of objects in Valorant have the same height as agents, and you can use these objects as a lineup for proper crosshair placement. On top of that, you can use Yoru Clone in order to get a better understanding where your crosshair should be placed when enemies are playing some angles or pushing certain corridors. And finally, you can use some external software such as aim labs that have built-in scenarios to make you practice this specific skill. Even though half of your kill potential relies on a proper crosshair placement, the other half relies on your raw aim. Now, the most important raw aiming skills that you need to practice for Valorant are reaction time, micro adjustments, flicking, and overall precision. There are some other skills that are also important, but those 4 are the ones that you need to work on every single day. Now, to practice raw aim, you can use multiple different tools and trainings, such as daily practice in regular deathmatch, team deathmatch, aim labs, Kovacs, practice range, etc. But keep in mind that your practice should mainly focus on your most visible mechanical problems at this moment of time. For an example, if you're lacking precision and steady aim, every day you can play a few rounds of regular deathmatch with either Sheriff or Guardian. During that training, your main focus is having above 80 headshot percentage, so you should be tracking enemies' head and shooting them when you're 100% certain that your crosshair is on their heads. When it comes to reaction time, practice range bots, aim labs, and Kovacs are your best friends. While micro adjustments and flicking are the easiest to be fixed in aim trainers with some specific tasks. Down below in the description, I'm going to share with you one of my public aim training playlists for both aim labs and Kovacs that you can use on a daily basis. These playlists are focusing on every mechanical problem that we have in Valorant, and you can also use them as a part of your regular warm-up routine. Once again, keep in mind that they are extremely general and maybe they won't focus too much on your specific raw aim problems. Now, the second subcategory of mechanics is gunplay, and what you really need to work on is your versatility and proper usage of all of these weapons. No matter which agent you're playing, you need to master using every single weapon in the game, because every weapon has its place where you can use it to get some free kills, make numbers advantage, and win rounds for your team. When you have a high weapon versatility, you don't need to always rely on your raw aim in order to win games. And this is especially important for players that have a very low mechanical skill ceiling, such as me for an example. Based on my coaching experience, a lot of times this is a much bigger problem for players rather than their raw aim. I had countless of examples where my students were only using one-tap weapons such as Vandal, Guardian, and Sheriff, but as soon as I taught them how to master other weapons, they instantly started ranking up faster. So what is a good weapon versatility? Basically, you're managing economy based on the map and agent that you're playing, but also based on yours economy, enemy's economy, and which strategy you want to execute. You're buying a gun which will give you the easiest time to take some free kills, make numbers advantage, and win a specific round for your team. So the main weapons that you need to master in Valorant are Classic, Shorty, Sheriff, Stinger, Judge, Bulldog, Phantom, Vandal, Outlaw, and Operator. Classic because it is our default weapon, Shorty should be your primary secondary weapon in most of the full buy rounds, and it can grant you free kills in close range fights, but also we can use it in the first round or as a really strong eco weapon on some maps. Sheriff is a great weapon for the first round on some maps, or eco rounds, and while you're mastering Sheriff, your gunplay with other one-tap weapons will also become better. Stinger is a great half-buy, force-buy or bonus round weapon, and much better than Spicta in terms of economy and overall value. Judge is a free kill weapon on claustrophobic maps, while Bulldog is an amazing force-buy weapon for medium and long-range maps. Obviously, you need to master using both Phantom and Vandal because they should be the guns that you're using 60% of time in full buy rounds. Now, Phantom is currently a bit better, but this choice completely depends on your personal aiming style and what you prefer. Outlaw is the absolutely best anti-eco weapon on defender side of every map, and sometimes you should even buy it on attack. Force it whenever you see that 3 or more enemies have less than 3,800 credits, meaning that they cannot buy Heavy Shield with Phantom or Vandal, so you can easily delete them with one body shot. And finally, Operator is a free elo stick, especially in ranks below Immortal where players' utility usage, pathing and positioning are extremely bad, and you can easily punish them with this gun. So even if you're maining agents such as Sage or Cypher, you use the weapons that will grant you free kills, free rounds, and free games. When your raw aim is inconsistent during a specific day, we can use other weapons that don't necessarily rely on raw mechanics. Also, mastering other weapons is important as well, but these are the ones that you truly need to use on a regular basis. When it comes to mastering all of these guns, Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, and Practice Range are your best friends. You should be learning how to one-tap, burst fire, spray, when to ADS and scope in, how to use double scope on Operator, and all of the other mechanics. Once you become the John Wick of Valorant, your grind will become 10 times easier. Now, the final subcategory of mechanics is your movement, and this is equally important as your raw aim. There are countless of movement mechanics that you need to master, but the most important ones are peeking, strafing, jump spotting, dead zoning, skill jumps, and agent-specific movement. The first thing that you should focus on is learning how to stop and shoot, essentially developing a feeling for accuracy. This is something that you can simply practice in any game mode by using a crosshair that has a slight movement error. When crosshair is wide open, you're not accurate. When it shrinks down, you're ready to take a shot. This is especially important because during the longer fight, you should be strafing left and right in order to be unpredictable and a harder target to kill. So if you're not properly combining your left and right hands, there is no way you're winning that fight unless enemies are equally bad. The second thing that you need to work on are generally your peeking techniques and how to properly clear angles, which I've completely explained in this movement guide that I'm going to leave down in the description. Now, jump spotting is probably the most underused skill in low and medium elo lobbies. Most of the times when your team is not playing on contact, you should first jump spot enemies to reveal them and bait their shots, and then take a fight with a proper peek and crosshair placement. Stop swinging everything without any information. When it comes to mastering counter-strafing in Valorant, it is not that important. It can maybe help you with a bit better accuracy, but what is really important is learning the dead zone mechanic. Basically, as soon as you release your movement keys during a strafe, you can take an accurate shot to delete enemies while abusing the full-on peeker's advantage. And there are plenty of skill jumps and agent-specific movement that you need to master after you improve all of the other techniques. For an example, you need to know that you can silently drop down the ropes by holding shift and pressing the attach key at the very end, so that you're not wasting enormous amount of time shifting down the ropes. Then, even though you're not playing movement agents, you and your teammates can boost each other on almost every box. And if you are playing movement agents, you need to master proper movement with their abilities, such as raised satchels or using the jet's glide in order to reach certain positions. Once again, most of these mechanics and how to train them I've explained in my movement and positioning guides, so I highly recommend you to check out these videos. Now we have the second pillar of improvement, which is game knowledge, and this one is why coaching exists. Most of the Valorant players are not hard-stuck because their mechanics are bad, but they have no idea how to actually play this game. First thing that you need to learn is how to properly play every single map in ranked environment. Basically understanding proper strategies and positioning in combination with proper macro and micro playstyle. But remember that most of the time what you see in VCT or from pro players is not something that you can replicate in every elo. Second thing that you need to learn are the weaknesses and strengths of every agent as well as the proper utility usage. For an example, even if you don't play controllers, you need to know what is a good or a bad smoke for every scenario. Why? So that you can micro-correct your teammates if they're doing some smokes that are losing you rounds, or if they don't want to cooperate, you at least understand that a specific smoke is bad and you know how to adapt to it. Or even better, if enemies are using some bad smoke setup, you know that it is bad and you know how to abuse it. Also, you need to learn the most common utility combos and placements so that you know what you need to expect from a specific enemy's team composition and how should you play around it. For an example, if enemies have Sage and Cypher on defensive split, it would be a complete suicide executing A set or B set in the first round, because we have no information when it comes to their positioning. So in the first round, we should do a 5-man push onto A tower, take control of that area, and then decide what to do next based on certain factors. Then you need to learn every trick on every map, such as some spam spots, lineups, and cheeky off angles, which both you and enemies can abuse for free kills. And finally, every player should learn proper economy management for both you and your team, as well as proper adaptations on enemy's economy. Now, order in which you should improve your game knowledge is the following: proper economy management, working on your map knowledge, understanding proper utility usage starting with your main agents, learning different agent combos and setups, and finally learning some tips and tricks which can give you an advantage over your enemies. These 5 things are the most important for you in order to consistently move forward through Valorant ranks, especially if you're below Immortal 3. Now, Charlatan, how the hell do I work on my game knowledge? Well, the first thing that I would recommend you is to make some kind of a ranked playbook for yourself, because visual notes are always better rather than a mental notes. Game knowledge in Valorant is vast, and let's be honest, it is impossible for an average player to remember every piece of information at every moment of time. Basically, you want to make a document where you write down every rule, solution, tip, trick, setup, or a thing that you should either work on or remember while you are actually playing the game. You should split that document in 2 parts. First part are the individual notes where you write down general things that you should focus on as a solo player, such as general economy management, specific rules that you should follow during your gameplay, or tips that you need to apply. And the second part are the separate segments for every single map. How to counter and play with or against a specific team compositions. What should you do in the first rounds, eco rounds, full buy rounds, or any other round as a default play on these maps. Which are the best strategies or tricks that we want to abuse on a specific map. What type of plays and setups you should specifically perform with your agent. What type of plays and setups our teammates should do for a specific scenario. And then you can make many segments like this. Just make sure that they are easy to read and understand while you're actually playing the game. You can also include some images for your strategies and setups that you make in Valorant, so that you're not cluttering that document with too much text. And then you should be practicing all of these setups and outplays inside of unranked games, Swift Play, or in the custom server in order for you to engrave them within your good autopilot mode. Keep in mind that this document is just like a third wheel that we use until we don't need it anymore. At some point, all of these things should become natural for you. Now, how can an average player learn what is optimal or bad in Valorant in a specific elo or generally in ranked? Thankfully, this game has been out for 5 years, and there is plenty of good content that you can consume in order to improve your knowledge, because it is much better for you to learn from others' mistakes instead of you going through a very long trial and error period. But be very careful when you're choosing your teachers. So to sum it up, watch YouTube guides, VOD reviews, study others' gameplay, or if money is not an issue, get coaching from someone that is very experienced, because that is the whole purpose of private coaching. I also guarantee you that if you apply every piece of knowledge from my public guides and VOD reviews on the main and second YouTube channels, your speed of progress is going to double. When it comes to map and agent specific knowledge, on my Discord server I have built an in-depth ranked playbook for every single map. Everything that I've previously mentioned is fully explained inside of that playbook, which you can use to build your own. And every week, instead of that playbook, I'm uploading some new guides, which can help you with mastering proper utility usage and setups on every agent. Now we have the third pillar of improvement, which is game sense. Basically, this is a combination of your decision making and overall adaptiveness. Your ability to make the most optimal play in the shortest amount of time based on the information that you have at that moment. This skill will naturally become better for you as you're improving your overall game knowledge and as you're playing the game, but there are two things that you can work on in order to improve it faster. First one is the speed of your information gathering, improving your general and map awareness. When it comes to general awareness, during every game you should try to note down a few important infos that can help you with better decision making. You can take mental notes, but for an average player it would be much better if you're taking visual notes in the notepad or simply on a piece of paper. At the start of every game you already have 3 very important infos: enemy's team composition, your team composition, and map that you're playing. Already based on this information, you need to have some kind of a general plan for that specific game, and you should be asking yourself the following questions. What is the weakness and strength of each team comp? How should we play this specific map on a macro and micro level? Basically, what should we do on a team and individual level to outplay enemies? What type of play should we expect from the enemy team on both of these levels? How should we play full, eco, half, bonus and force buy rounds based on all of this information? Then as the match is progressing, you should be reading your opponents and adapting to their playstyle. Simply ask yourself a few questions that can give you an answer to all of your problems. How are the enemies positioning on a macro and micro level, and how can we abuse that? What type of patterns did they develop during this game, and what should we expect in the next round? What do enemies do based on their economy or based on their utility status, such as having some big ultimates? Now, all of this info mainly helps you with a better initial start of your rounds, which is really important. But even more important is what you do in the middle and at the end of each round. This is where map awareness is extremely important, and in Valorant your eye should be on the minimap 50% of time. Right now on the screen you can read my post that explains trigger points and a few fixes when it comes to minimap blindness. You can try to practice having better map awareness by following these specific tips, but also having a big minimap where you can see each corner of the map can help you with this problem. There's a lot of trainings and tips that can help you with better map awareness, but this topic I'm going to cover in depth in my future videos. So if you don't want to miss any important guides for your faster improvement, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. The second thing that can help you with better game sense is learning how to properly play different scenarios in the game, basically recognizing patterns and win conditions. An average player would think that the amount of different scenarios in Valorant is infinite, because there's 11 maps with 27 agents and God knows how many more in the future. But you would be wrong. No! In ranked environment, there is only around 100 rules that you need to follow in order to have higher chances of winning your rounds and games. And these 100 rules will cover at least 80% of scenarios that are extremely repetitive during your gameplay. Also, based on my 5 years of coaching experience and collecting data from Valorant ranked environment, there is only around 3000 scenarios that you need to learn in order for you to play this game on an easy mode. Yes, I know, 3000 scenarios is still not a low number, but it is better than a million, and we can find a solution for 2400 of these scenarios within the 100 rules that I've mentioned before. That's a lot of numbers, but what I'm trying to make you understand is that you need to play this game as a game of scenarios. Everything should have some kind of a meaning and purpose. This is especially important because most Valorant players are on a 24/7 autopilot mode, and they are extremely repetitive. They play same positions every round, they do similar strategies or executes, and they repeat the same patterns over and over again. Your job is to recognize these patterns at any stage of the round or game and understand yours and enemies' win conditions. So for an example, you're playing a 4v2 full buy retake. Your main win condition during that round should be a proper refrag potential where we are either playing all together or in groups of 2 where we can trade each other's out. Then you're playing post plant on C side of Lotus in a 4v3 scenario with a full killjoy setup on the spike. 2 of your teammates are playing passively from C long, but one of your allies is aggressing enemies in the CT. What should you do? Play with your teammates from C long, and nobody cares about that one idiot that is fighting enemies alone, because here we have a much better win condition instead of taking some pointless fights. Even if that teammate dies, in the worst case scenario we are 3 versus 3 in this example, which is still good for a post plant. Now, Charlatano, how can I actually improve my game sense, decision making, and adaptiveness? Well, as I've said, all of this is gonna get better for you as you're improving your game knowledge and as you're simply playing the game. But you will grow 10 times faster if you do some kind of a work outside of Valorant. Record your gameplay, review it, compare it to others, take down the notes and build up some data based on which you will have higher chances of winning. The easiest point from which you can start is finding solutions for your deaths and trying to minimize them as much as possible. Ask yourself why you died and how can this be prevented in the future. Was it a mechanical issue? Maybe it was positioning, and ask yourself what would have been a better position at that moment of time. Did enemies catch you off guard and why were they able to do that? But what if you cannot find an answer for all of these situations? Simply compare your gameplay with the gameplay of someone that is more skilled than you and who is playing the same agent on the same map. Over time, you can try to dive a bit deeper into your gameplay and focus on your mechanical problems, pattern recognition, breaking down key rounds, or setting some goals based on your discoveries. Essentially, self-reflection and collecting data about yourself and Valorant as a game are going to improve you much faster than anything else. That is the main difference between a mindless and an efficient grind, how much work you do outside of ranked games. But once again, the fastest and easiest way to improve game sense is by learning from someone that is more experienced than you, such as your high elo friends or simply hiring a private coach. Now we have the 4th pillar of improvement, which is learning the ranked team play, and team play should be put in between 10 asterisk. I'm sorry to all of the VCT enjoyers, but what you see in pro play is what you can almost never replicate in ranked environment. The main mentality mistake that players make in ranked is that they start every match with a pre-assumption that their teammates are always going to do the most optimal plays in every scenario. Which is an absolutely stupid mentality, because more often than not, you will have to solo carry, you will have to correct your teammates, you will have to close out your rounds and games yourself. You need to develop a very specific ranked team play mentality, and as much as you focus yourself on reading enemies, that same level of focus you need to put onto your teammates. So every game you should start with a mentality that your teammates are bad until they prove you wrong. And you need to consistently adapt your playstyle based on the rounds that you're playing and based on what type of teammates you have in a specific game. For an example, if you have teammates that are aggressive on the defender side and they are instantly dying at the start of every round, no matter which agent you are playing, you need to recognize which one of your teammates has the highest chances of dying and figure out how you can use them to fight enemies together while making numbers advantage for the rest of your team. I can speak about this topic for hours, but just remember that if you're not controlling the outcome of your rounds, you better pray to God in order to win. In that case, what are the most important team play topics that you need to learn in order to win more games? First of all, refrag potential is everything, and fighting together is always better rather than fighting alone. You need to learn how to properly position based on what both your teammates and enemies are doing. You need to learn different crossfire, double peek, double tower, and other trading setups that will give you higher chances of killing enemies and making your teammates stay alive. Most of the time, you should be playing with your teammates that have the highest chances of dying, or a teammate that will be the first contact between yours and enemy team. Keep in mind that no matter which agent you're playing, you don't need to always be the first contact with the enemy team, and sometimes you will have to play a smart baiting game for a greater good. Remember that it's much better for you to learn from your own mistakes, rather than instantly dying and then watching your teammates lose the round based on some mistakes that maybe you wouldn't make if you were alive. Then numbers and economy are also dictating how you need to organize yourself and your team based on different situations. If you have the true numbers advantage on the defender side, the map control. Simply focus on preserving that numbers advantage and play with your teammates. If enemies are playing an eco round, simply focus on a proper refrag potential and you should primarily abuse the gun advantage that you have in that specific round. But also in rounds where you are in some kind of a disadvantage, we should maybe go for some kamikaze plays or solo plays that will give us higher chances of winning. Essentially, there are 2 points in your ranked grind where you should have 2 completely different team-oriented playstyles. From Iron 1 to Immortal 3, you need to have a self-centered mindset where most of the time you are the one controlling the outcome of your rounds. But from Immortal 3 to Radiant, you can expect some level of good team play in Valorant ranked environment, where you're willing to do some sacrifices that will allow your teammates to win these rounds for you. So the main mistake here is that an average player expects from their teammates to perform the most optimal plays, and you expect a lot from them. But in reality, you should be consistently tracking what your allies are doing, and you should be adapting yourself to different type of teammates and to different scenarios. Right now, I will just give you one example of bad gameplay in ranked environment. You're playing Omen on defender side of Haven and you're anchoring C-site 12 rounds in a row, because you saw that an average VCT Omen player plays C-site as their default position. In 80% of rounds, you played a retake in a numbers disadvantage and you've lost most of them. All of a sudden, score on the halftime is 2-10 in a favor of enemy team, because you played mindlessly on an autopilot mode, and you didn't adapt your gameplay based on what type of teammates you've got and based on what enemies were doing. In ranked, you need to be like a water, and your flow is dictated by multiple different factors. Now, the 5th pillar of improvement is your communication, and tips for this topic are very straightforward. First of all, you should always communicate what you see and what you want to do. Keep all of your strategies simple and they should be easy to understand, even for an Iron player. Tone of your voice is also very important. You should sound confident in your callouts, even if some of them result in a lost round. Also remember to never tunnel vision on the callouts. If you or your teammates suggest some kind of a play, first take a look at the minimap and observe if your teammates are actually following that specific callout. If they are listening, great, we can continue with the strategy. If they are not, find some other solutions and adapt to whatever your teammates want to do at that moment of time. Sometimes you will also have to repeat your callouts multiple times in order for your teammates to process them, because most of the Valorant players are autopiloting a lot. Then you should never be toxic and you should never engage in some pointless arguments with random bots on the internet.
Green, what's your problem, Green?
Don't add fuel to the fire and focus on winning the game. If your teammates are toxic but they are still giving you some good callouts, don't mute them. If they are just plain toxic and they give you no value through communication, mute them and find a solution how you can maybe bait them or use them in order to win that specific game. On attacker side, it is extremely important that you're giving your teammates macro strategies based on your good game knowledge that we've previously discussed. In the first 4 to 6 rounds, you should be leading your team, and you should primarily test the 5-man executes against the enemy team or the best ranked strategies that we have on that specific map. If those tactics are not working or your teammates don't want to listen, there is always some kind of an adaptation that we can do, and there is a solution for everything. You should always try to micro-correct your teammates or their utility usage if you need something very specific from them or they're maybe making some kind of a bad play on both attackers and defenders side. Now in Ranked, 50% of times your teammates will listen to you and 50% of times they won't. That is why mastering the craft of silent support is very important. Basically understanding how to support your teammates even if there is no communication or team play in a specific match. That is why improving your game knowledge, decision making and game sense is extremely important if you want to have a consistent grind in Valorant ranked solo queue. Now, if you have problems with communication or you cannot speak while actually playing the game, there are a few things that you can do to fix this problem. First of all, you can learn all of the callouts for every location on every map by simply memorizing them from these images that you can see on your screen right now. Then inside of the game, go to map settings and put the show map region names on always. When you open up the map, you will be able to read the most important names for some of these locations. One of the best ways to practice communicating while actually playing the game is in the regular deathmatch. During the deathmatch, you should be speaking out loud to yourself everything that you are doing or that you see at that moment of time. For an example, yo guys, let's push B site. I'm clearing the B main is clear. One enemy is at the switch. Enemy at the switch is dead. I'm moving into B site to take some extra space. Please support me with smokes. Logs are cleared and you get the point. This practice will make you develop a habit of speaking and having a good level of communication even in the most heated moments during your gameplay. So what do you need to achieve is that you can equally focus on your communication as well as on what is happening on your screen at that moment of time. But Charlatan, what if I cannot speak? What if I'm a girl? Because, you know, Valorant players are kinda misogynistic. What if I'm dyslexic? Well, these are some real problems in Valorant, but you can maybe try using a voice changer or an AI voice tool, or at least use smart pings and text chat in order to navigate your team. Now, when it comes to the mentality, which is the sixth pillar of improvement, we kinda explained everything in the previous segments, but let's just give you an answer to one very specific question. What is Valorant and what is the mindset that you need to have in order to consistently move forward? Valorant is a gambling game of numbers that is being played on probability of chances. You need to follow a certain set of rules, strategies, tips and solutions in order to have higher chances of winning your gunfights, rounds and games. You need to enter every round and game with some kind of a plan based on information that you have. 100% win rate is impossible, but what we are aiming for is 60% win rate and trying to always control the scenarios that are within our control. 40% of rounds and games are usually an automatic loss, but we can still learn from them and grow as an individual. You need to understand that not every round and game is winnable, but you should keep playing even if you think that the game is 100% lost. Surrendering is never an option. Scenarios that we cannot control should never impact our mentality in a negative way, such as smurfs, cheaters, toxic or bad teammates. You need to play Valorant as a game of chaotic chess and learn how to adapt in that chaos. Valorant is also a game of scenarios where you need to recognize different patterns or win conditions and have a solution for every scenario that you can control. The last thing that should impact the outcome of your rounds and games is your raw mechanical skill, basically trying to out-aim enemies in every game. You need to understand what is optimal, good or bad when it comes to everything in Valorant, so you need to have high levels of proper game knowledge. You need to find a perfect playstyle for yourself based on your strengths and weaknesses as an individual. You also need to have 2 main agents and 2 alternative picks that will suit your playstyle and that you're going to completely master until Immortal 3. Up to Immortal 3 you should never fill, but that is why you need to master 4 agents that are versatile and with which you can occasionally fill some roles. Usually mastering at least one controller such as Omen is very important and beneficial, because controller role has a huge win rate impact in the ranked environment. Team compositions usually don't matter at all until Immortal 3, and a better team will always win, as long as you have at least a good controller for a specific map. After Immortal 3, you are willing to make some kind of a compromise, and at that point you need to understand how to play more agents or different roles. You should never compare yourself and your progress to other players. We are all different and we all have different capabilities and improvement rate. You are never willing to take any shortcuts when it comes to your improvement. You should be focusing on building good habits that will carry your games even in Radiant lobbies. Remember that a bad play that worked a few times is still a bad play, same as a bad habit. But you should be abusing every trick and everything that is overpowered at that moment of time in order to progress faster, so you should be following the ranked meta. At the end of the day, your main goal is reaching high elo lobbies as fast and as efficient as possible by abusing any slight edge that you can get over your enemies inside of the game. Because when you play with and against better players, you also progress and learn much faster, which is another point of private coaching. You should play Valorant Ranked only when you're 100% focused and ready to win, both physically and mentally. If you don't feel like you're ready to perform during that day, simply focus on training or playing on some second account. Taking care of your body and mind in real life will have a great impact to your in-game performance as well. Eat healthy, sleep well, go to the gym, and in the matter of a few weeks you will notice positive changes. And finally, consistency, hard work and dedication are everything, and they will always beat the talent. Your progress will never be linear, you will always have ups and downs. During your heights, keep your ego in check and always strive to become a better version of yourself than yesterday. While during your lows, you should understand that your progress is a marathon, and you should always have a positive attitude both as an individual and as an in-game teammate. So, promote positive energy, avoid spilling frustration, celebrate your short-term achievements, and your main focus should always be your ultimate end goal. If you apply this mindset, no matter how bad of a player you are right now, at some point you will reach your goals. In my career as an esports player and as an individual coach, I've learned that talent is truly meaningless without passion, dedication, self-motivation, and a proper mindset. Which brings us to the final pillar of improvement, and that is your training and preparation. Remember that mindlessly grinding ranked games will take you absolutely nowhere, or your improvement rate is going to be very slow. So this is what I would recommend to every player. First of all, prioritize consistency and quality instead of the quantity, in order to prevent burnouts and in order to always have high levels of focus. Valorant is a very grindy and mentally taxing game that rewards consistency. Most of the players will see faster improvements if they play only around 3 ranked games per day, where they are 100% focused on winning, every single day, every single act, and every single episode. If you can or you want to play more than 3 games, make sure that you have mental and physical resets when you feel a dip in your focus. Before every gaming session, you should have at least 10 to 20 minutes of some proper warm-up. Also, every day you should perform some mechanical training routine that is focusing on all of your in-game mechanics such as aim, gunplay, and movement. Besides that, every day you should perform some general training as well that is focusing on problems in your other skill sets such as game knowledge and decision making. And it would be very beneficial if you review your own gameplay at least once in 3 days, in order to have some self-reflection and better understanding of what you need to fix. If you follow this plan, you will definitely see faster improvements, but if you don't have that much time to invest into Valorant, this is a priority list for you. Numero uno, having a proper warm-up of at least 10 minutes. Number 2, playing at least 1 to 3 daily ranked games. Number 3, having at least 20 to 30 minutes of some general training that is focused on developing game knowledge and decision making. Number 4, doing some VOD reviews and self-reflection on at least every 3 days. And finally, number 5, having at least 1 serious mechanical training session on every 3 days that is focusing on your most visible problems when it comes to aim, gunplay, and movement. Finally, what I would recommend to every player is to make some kind of an Excel or Google Sheets data tracking document where you simply track your daily performance. An example of this document you can find down below in the description, and it can help you to better understand your own problems and when do you perform the best. You should simply track every game that you play, what happened in a specific game, what were the main problems, as well as some other external factors that maybe impacted your performance in a negative or positive way, such as sleep, medication, specific food, etc. Okay, in this long guide, I've explained to you almost everything that I did and everything that I focused on when I reached Radiant for the first time, but also every other time as well. As you can see, there are no secret pills for getting better. It's all about having consistency and a good improvement plan that will suit both you, as an individual, as a player, and your personal needs or limitations. Obviously, there are multiple different layers of Valorant that I simply cannot explain only in one video, because the game is both simple and complex at the same time, depending on your end goal. Do you want to be a pro player? Do you want to be Radiant? Do you just want to get better at the game? And etc. That is why when you get any private coaching program from me, my students have 24/7 lifetime support as long as they need my assistance, or until they are satisfied with their improvements. Because there is always something that you can work on, and as you're grinding through different ranks, you consistently need to adapt yourself and your improvement plan to different environments. If you've reached the end of this video, you're already on the right path, and the most important thing is to enjoy your journey and have fun playing this game alone or with your friends. If you're not enjoying yourself, what is the point of life? Thank you for watching, and your favorite Radiant coach is already preparing a new guide for you.